Hello, welcome to the Living in Liberty YouTube channel. My name's Elizabeth Echeverria. I'm the founder of Living in Liberty, a nonprofit in Pittsburgh that helps women transition out of life of sex trafficking. We've been around since 2012. And today we're going to be talking about a question that we often get asked at Living in Liberty. It is, don't these women choose this lifestyle? And why don't they just exit or get out? And so let's start with first that most people, when they hear about this, have the perception of the movie Taken. In fact, I think 3 movies are in that series, and so it's really solidified this impression that most of trafficking happens through abduction. So when people hear that, they don't think people can, there's a choice to exit. They think they're being controlled and that they can't leave. And so, but really, in reality, that's only 3% of cases are abduction cases like the movie Taken. So what really does happen is it's through this grooming process called boyfriending. It's about 66% of cases happen through what's called boyfriending. And boyfriending is just what it sounds like. It's when a young man, probably 20-something, approaches a teenage girl and acts like a boyfriend, a love interest. And so traffickers are very savvy. They're master manipulators. They have like a sixth sense to search out young girls that have especially low self-esteem, are exceptionally insecure, and often have been sexually abused as children. They say 85 to 90% of trafficking victims were sexually abused as children. So that's a vulnerability factor that makes them more vulnerable to being trafficked. And it also, if you think about it, impacts their self-esteem and makes them feel more insecure having been sexually abused. So to go hand in hand, these traffickers have that keen sense of just being able to identify that, sense that in these young girls, and know who to target. So once they've identified, their next trafficking victim, then they start love bombing them. They start lavishing them and just paying a lot of attention to them, making them feel special. They get their hair and their nails done. They're buying them designer purses and clothing and taking them to dinner. They're acting like a boyfriend and just making them feel that extra special, building that trust and building that relationship so that in the future they can turn around and ask them to do things that they might not otherwise do. They turn around and say, in order to support our lifestyle, I need you to do this. And the young girl is probably in a better situation than she was before. Now, these young girls, the average age of entry is 12 to 13. And so this may be their first love interest or boyfriend. And like I said, it is probably, they're coming from a better, situation. This is a better situation than they were in before. They often have very hard home lives where they're not being supported in the way that, their parents aren't engaged with them. They're being neglected and not being paid attention to. And so it makes them more susceptible to being trafficked. And then through this the trauma of trafficking, there's this Stockholm syndrome or trauma bond that occurs with their trafficker and keeps them, because this relationship is a love interest, maybe even one of their first love interests, there's that attachment there. And they see it becomes a trauma bond. Even though they started trafficking them, they identify with their trafficker. In fact, it's not unusual for those, what they call in the life, referring to each other with familiar names like wifey or, daddy or things like that, so that it feels like a family to them, a family that they might not have had before. So they feel like a sense of belonging. And so through this, they identify with their trafficker and feel supported and have a relationship with them. So to say that they can choose, yes, they chose to have a relationship with them. But if you think about it, as a young teenager, 12 or 13, to make choices that they didn't know where they were going to end up being sold or trafficked. That's not really a choice. And then to say, well, why don't they choose to leave? Well, now they have a relationship with them. They see it as a good relationship, even though from the outside looking in, we don't see it as a good relationship. It's often maybe a better relationship than they were in before. And they also see this person as a love interest. So there's that trauma bond, or what we like to refer to as Stockholm syndrome, where they develop this connection and see this as someone that loves and cares for them and that they have a relationship with them. So it's not as easy as they're making a choice to get into it or making a choice to exit. So remember that most of trafficking happens through this grooming process called boyfriending. It's not as black and white as abduction and just making the decision to exit. It's a lot more complicated than that. I hope you learned something today, and we'd like to ask you today, we're trying to plan for future questions and videos. If there's something that you're interested in learning more about trafficking, please comment below with your questions that you'd like answered about human trafficking, and we will work to be able to answer those. I hope you have a wonderful day.